Hello, welcome back to Brianna's Bachelor Breakdown. I'm so excited to be back online talking to you guys, breaking down all the drama of this newest season of Bachelor in Paradise. As you may have noticed, I did take a 3-year hiatus. I was in grad school. I did just graduate with my Master's of Social Work. So your girl is officially a licensed clinical social work associate. So basically what that means, I'm a therapist. I am really interested in specializing in college student mental health, want to work in a college counseling center. That is kind of like my population. And so I'm really excited to take this degree and use what I have learned in school and from actually being people's therapist for the past year and use all those insights to really apply a different perspective to my breakdowns on this channel. So I'll still be getting into all the relationship dynamics, all the drama, everything that's going on from my personal perspective, but I think I'll also be able to provide theories as to why people may be behaving the way they may be behaving, where it might be coming from, what might be going on beneath the surface. Of course, none of these people are my clients, so I don't have their full histories. I can't diagnose them with anything, but it's always fun to toss some theories around. So that will be the new perspective that Brianna's Bachelor Breakdown will be coming from. So excited to start this second half of my journey. So let's get right into it. Last night, we saw the premiere of Bachelor in Paradise, and y'all, it was a lot going on. Okay, so the first thing that I noticed, so not only did I take a break from doing YouTube and doing videos for the past 3 years, I also haven't been watching the show. I stopped watching, I think, after whoever was before Zach. I never watched Zach's season of The Bachelor. So I think that might have been Gabby and Rachel. I think that was the last season I watched. And then when I decided, when I was getting closer to graduation, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to the YouTube channel, I was like, okay, well, let me get caught up on some of the seasons that I missed so that I at least have some sort of idea of who's going to be on Paradise. So I watched some of Grant's season. I watched everything through the Women Tell All because I was watching it on Hulu, and I don't know if y'all watch it on Hulu, but they are very strict. They are very quick to cut you off in the middle of the season because the show is quote unquote expired. That's what I was dealing with. So I know all the girls who are on Grant's season. And I, found a blog to summarize how everything ended. So I'm caught up with that. I tried to watch some of the Golden Bachelorette. I think was Joan, was her name. Y'all, it was cute. Don't get me wrong. It was very wholesome. And that's not for me. That's really not for me. I watched the whole first episode, and I don't know if y'all remember, but I got to the point where the cast was they were about to have the rose ceremony, and all of the men's loved ones, they each had someone send in a heartfelt video being you should date my dad or date my uncle because of this reason, da da da. And after the first two, I was like, okay, let's wrap it up. let's keep it moving. I don't watch reality TV to feel good about myself. I'm sorry, I really don't. That's not what's going on. And they did the whole season preview, and I was everyone seems to be having a good time, and I love that for them. I really do. But there was no crying, there was no fights, there was no storming out, there was no throwing water at people. I was where is the drama? Because that's what I'm here for. So I really couldn't get down with the Golden Bachelorette. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still excited to see what Paradise ends up doing with them on this season. I'm so excited for them to come, but the actual franchise Golden Bachelor, Bachelorette, that's just not for me. It's a little bit too wholesome. Anyway, getting into the actual season premiere of Bachelor in Paradise. So we start off, first thing I noticed, oh yeah, that's what I was saying. So I haven't been watching in a few years. So imagine my surprise when I click on the TV and we're in a whole new setting. Okay, so I did not realize I realized, I think, based on people's tweets, that everyone was just as shocked as I am. So I guess it's new to this season that they're in a resort. And So that was really startling, I must say. It had a very like modern feel. Like it looked like the type of resort that like I personally would want to go vacation at. So like that was cool. Like I didn't mind it, but I was just kind of like, okay, so when are we getting a paradise? And like one thing I didn't really like, okay, I saw some people on Twitter saying that they felt like they probably made that accommodation for the Golden cast that's gonna be joining, because you know you can't have the old people out there with no AC climbing up and down the stairs, which I get and I appreciate that they put that in there. But I felt like they were just hanging out on the resort all day. Like there was no beach access, and I feel like that takes away from like the casual vibe of Paradise that I think really makes it distinct from like the other two series in this franchise. And so I think there could have been a happy medium of like, okay, we have the resort area, we have the pool, lounge, like whatever, if you want to chill in the AC, cool, but then we still have open beach access and people who like don't need as much AC can go out and hang out down there. So I wish they would have had that like half and half split. Also, I saw a lot of people on Twitter talking about the camera quality, which I too wish that like they had reduced it. I guess is the only way to say it, because like I said, it looked very modern, which like there's nothing wrong with it, but like Bachelor in Paradise is always a little bit like cringe, it's a little grunge, and like it was just a little bit too sharp, just a little, the edges were just a little bit too crisp and clear, and that's not really what I'm coming for. And I can't remember if this season usually opens with the Bachelor in Paradise, like Almost Paradise theme song. I guess that would kind of give away like who's the cast. So like for this first episode I was like, okay, we can go without it. But like I really hope they bring it back, because that's that's so ingrained into the like persona of Paradise. So I at least hope we can have that. Like the Goldens can do that. They can sit on the beach and chill out. So, you know, we'll see. But that was my first observation, my first takeaway. We are in a new setting. We're not in Mexico, we're in Costa Rica. And so the season opens and we have all the cast members pulling up, and you have that phase where everyone's just like being friendly, like meeting people from seasons who were not on their season that they haven't met yet before, as well as like meeting people or like reuniting with people from their own season and just kind of like having a good time that way. Everyone's friendly, good vibes, getting their first drinks. Like it was cute. The first thing I noticed, and I don't know why this struck me as weird, but like people were using a lot of like slang and like internet lingo, which is just like always weird to like hear offline, I guess. It kind of like, when I kind of like sat back and thought about it, I was like, that makes sense. Like these people, like I'm 28, so I was like, these people are like, a lot of them are around my age, so it makes sense that like we would have similar slang. But it was just kind of like, it felt like it was breaking the fourth wall a little bit. I was like, no, you're not supposed to know that. Like I remember, I think his name was Jeremy, when he first saw Bailey, he was like, oh, her body tea. I was like, I don't know. And then Bailey again was talking about how she can't drink coffee because she has IBS. And Spencer was like, oh yeah, hot girls have IBS. I was like, who taught him this? Like, it was just a little bit like, what's going on? So that was like awkward, but like, you know, we moved past it. And so we get all the meet and greets, everyone's getting settled. But another thing that I noticed was that they did not show any ages on screen. And I'm wondering if that's because of the Goldens that are going to be coming, which would make sense. But it was kind of like, I felt like I had to pay extra attention, because like some of the cast members would straight up ask each other like, hey, how old are you? And I felt like I had to like really tune into that, because we were not going to get that information again. And that's just like good to know. I like to, when I'm evaluating a relationship, I like to have all of the age. I like to have all the dynamics, and that includes age, just so I can know what angle everyone might be coming from, how things are playing out. Then we get to Justin from Katie's season, and he gets the first date card. He asks Lexi, and I enjoyed the conversation that they like had, where he was kind of like scoping her out to make sure he wanted to take her on the date, and they were like talking about the pressure that they felt just like dating in your 30s. which I think is like very real. I've noticed that amongst my friends who like are still looking for relationships or still looking for partners. I feel like having a partner in this society, in American society, is definitely a form of social currency. And I feel like in your early 20s, it's like everyone is kind of like going through the same things. Like everyone's probably dating for the first time, going through like bad breakups, dealing with toxic relationships, and like everyone's just like having a good time. There's not a lot of pressure. And then I feel like once you hit like 25, 26, 27, people start dating with like a little bit more intention. And then you start getting a flurry of like wedding invitations. And so it really becomes clear like who's in a relationship and like who's not. And that can be really jarring. That can be really awkward to like be on one side or the other of. And so I appreciate that they brought that conversation to national television and just like normalized the like, hey, 30 is not old, first of all, and that it's perfectly normal to still be figuring things out. And I think another reason for that, from like a sociology perspective, when people, I guess, like, okay, going back to like the 1900s, when people first started to have like agency to marry for love and things like that, and could make their own decisions more so about who they wanted to be in a relationship with, I think a lot of times people felt like they wanted to have a partner to start their life with. So like people would like graduate high school and get married, or graduate college, or not graduate at all, but they would get married in their early to mid 20s because they felt like they needed someone to start building with, to start buying that home and starting that family and just like really get their adult foundation. They wanted a partner to do that with. Whereas nowadays there's a shift to where people are wanting to be established before getting into that like life-defining serious relationship. So a lot of times people want to be graduated from college, maybe want to even have their secondary degree. They want to have that house, or like at least be financially stable enough to enjoy a serious relationship to its fullest potential. No one wants to be like going on picnic dates all the time and doing broke activities every single day. Like you want to be able to take your partner out to dinner and buy them nice gifts for anniversaries and things of that nature. So I think there's been a shift of like people are no longer looking to a relationship as a foundation to start adulthood with. And they're more so looking to have that foundation, start that foundation themselves. And then once they feel stable and solidified, then they're looking to get into that serious relationship. But I feel like the narrative around like pressures of when it's socially expected to be in a relationship have not caught up with that trend. Even though the reality is showing that people are getting into relationships or serious relationships later, society has not caught up with that. And it's still kind of like, well, why are you not in a serious relationship in your 30s? I really enjoyed that Justin and Lexi had that conversation. Then we start peeping some of the other like couples that are starting to form. We see that Kyle is starting to have his eyes on Bailey. Also, side note, y'all, this is gonna sound really weird. I sometimes rename people in my head. If I feel like they just like have a face that looks like it should have a different name. So like for Bailey, to me, she looks like a Courtney. So like in my head, I'm like, oh, that's Courtney. Like there she goes, Courtney. I just think that's what she looks like. So like that's what I call her in my head. Because I think that should be her name. So if I sometimes slip up and call her Courtney, that's why. But anyways, so we start seeing some of the other couples starting to form, and Kyle starts to have his eyes on Bailey. And one thing that I noticed about Kyle's like strategy per se is that he is really trying to play like the masculine card. Like he's really trying to lead with like, I'm a man that can take care of you. I think it was Alex who was talking to him. They were talking about superlatives, which I think she talked about that with Grant. That seems to be like her go-to shtick. She was like, oh, I got best smile. Like, what about you? And he was like, oh, I went to military school. We didn't have superlatives. Okay, boring. Like, that wasn't the question. You said, what superlative did you get? So I just noticed that like he would try to like throw in those like random fun facts that would kind of craft this image of him being this very masculine person into conversations that really didn't call for it. And I felt like that was his way of trying to show women what kind of partner he would be, rather than just saying like, hey, these are my genuine like interests and hobbies, and like this is who I am as a person. Like he was really trying to like push out a certain image. And I saw it again, conversation with Alex too. He was like, yeah, I went to military school. He was like, I graduated early, da da da. Like, boy, that's not what we asked. What superlative did you have? You didn't have one, so just say that. Like, I just felt like he just like took the opportunities he could get to build up his image and like this persona that he was trying to craft for himself in situations where it wasn't really called for, and it's not what the woman or his conversational partner was necessarily looking for. He had that with Alex, but then, and that was someone I guess he was just like chatting with as friends, and then he was like chatting with Bailey, and I felt like it came up again because he was like, oh yeah, like I was always raised to work. I love working. I love being around the house and doing housework and blah, 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 blah. And Bailey's just sitting there like, princess treatment, sounds good to me. Like, that's the type of girl it would work on. So, like, hey, maybe he knows what he's doing with his strategy. Well, maybe not. We'll get to that. But I just was kind of like, I don't know. Like, it just didn't come across as genuine. So then we get to Spencer and Jess. They're clicking. One thing that I really like notice, and this doesn't just happen on like dating shows, it happens like in regular conversation in general, but a lot of people think that like getting to know someone nowadays is just like sharing your trauma, and like a lot of people like lead with that. They're like, let me tell you the worst thing that ever happened to me, and like test almost how you'll react to see if you'll like accept me, and from there, I'll decide if I want to build a relationship with you, whether it be friendship or romantic or otherwise. And it's like, that's not normal. that's not normal. We need to actually like reel it back in a little bit, because we don't know if we can trust people. And I get that like people are doing that as a way to determine if they can trust people. Having similar traumas is not really having anything in common. Like, that's like, yes, you have similar understandings, you might be able to understand where someone is coming from, but that doesn't mean that you have similar values, similar interests, outlooks on life. Like, that just means that like life handed you the same deck of cards. So you might feel really close to someone if you're like, oh wow, like we've both been through the same things, and like you might be like 2-3 years into a relationship when you realize, oh wait, we actually don't have fun together. And like you could have figured that out if you had spent the first few dates or hangouts like just talking about like what you actually like to do, rather than just like trauma dumping on this person that you just met. And so I say all that to say that I think that Spencer and Jess really led with that, and it seems to work for them so far. But I think in general we should reel that back in, and I think a little bit like from a therapist perspective, I think a little bit of where that comes from is like so many people are in therapy nowadays, which is great, please keep coming, but like that's the way therapy works, right? Like you get in, you sit down, and you're like, here's everything that ever happened to me, and it's like that person is there to hear that. We want to hear that information, and like that's the reason why we're interacting, but that's not the reason why you're interacting with like your peers. And I think sometimes people have a hard time distinguishing between like, this person cares about me and that means they want to hear about all my traumas, versus like, this person cares about me and they want to get to know me, they want to spend time with me and enjoy my company. And like it can be hard for people to draw those boundaries within themselves of like what's appropriate to share and what's not at certain points in relationship. Because of course, I think as you get further into getting to know someone and you realize like, oh, I actually trust this person, like blah, 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 then of course, tell them what you have on your chest, tell them your story, like by all means. So that's what Spencer and Jess lead with. And Jess is over here talking about her like cheating experience of being cheated on. And Spencer, he did something that really bothered me, just like personally in conversation. Jess was like, oh, this is what happened to me, like blah, blah, blah. And then Spencer did not acknowledge it. He was just like, oh yeah, me too, I've also been cheated on. Which like, in that scenario, again, for them, it worked. They seemed to really enjoy the conversation, and it seemed to bring them closer. But when he first was like, oh yeah, I also have trauma, I did not know where that sentence was going. So like, for me, if I were Jess, I would be sitting there being like, okay, but can you acknowledge what I just said? Like, before we get to your trauma, I just spilled out my heart to you. So like, can you like acknowledge that? So that was really bothersome. But as we saw, he was going to the same place that she was. So like, it worked. I just wish he had taken like a 1 second pause to be like, yes, you experienced that. I too have also experienced. Let's get into it, you know? We also learned that Spencer was previously engaged, which I think is always interesting. And I wonder if that will come up again. We didn't really see it on this episode, but I have my eye on that bit of information. Okay, so then Justin and Lexi are supposed to go on a date, gets rained out, womp womp. And then we get to the next day, and we have Hakeem. He makes a personalized date card for Bailey, which I honestly thought was really cute. She had a stink face as soon as he gave it to her, which, like, you know, she's not into him, and I feel like she handled it really well. Like, she very quickly let him know that he was in the friend zone, which, like, I think is his story. Unfortunate for him, but like, you know, no harm, no foul. But one thing I think he did do that was like kind of awkward, I don't know if this would have changed Bailey's receptiveness to him or anything like that, but I think one thing he did do that didn't give him any points was so she was talking about, like, they were talking about, oh yeah, like, he was like, I've been peeping you, having my eye on you, like, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, yeah, like, I've seen you around. She was like, yeah, I think we took a selfie, like, yesterday. And he was like, yeah, like, that's your thing, selfies. And she was like, yeah, like, I love to take selfies. And he was like, oh, that's not really my thing. Yeah, like, I like a selfie, but, like, I'm not gonna get up out of bed and take a selfie. I'm not gonna take a selfie, like, before going to the shower. Like, he was just, like, naming all these instances in which he would not take a selfie, which is fine, you know, like, speak your truth, king. Like, that's what's going on in your world. But I just think that, like, when you're trying to get to know someone and they're expressing, like, hey, this is a hobby of mine, you want to be as agreeable as possible. And if you don't have that same hobby, rather than being like, oh, well, I don't like that thing, because it's like, well, what do you want me to say to that? Okay, you don't like it, okay, well, I do. Like, that just puts a barrier in the middle of the conversation. So it's like, either you can connect with someone and be like, oh wow, like, I also enjoy that hobby. But if you don't enjoy that hobby, that's an opportunity for you to ask questions and say, oh, like, why do you like selfies so much? Like, are you a person that's really sentimental? Do you like looking back on memories? Like, that's a chance for you to, like, get to know them, even though you might not share that same hobby. And so I feel like that was a really missed opportunity for Hakeem, and I think that really, like, put up an awkward barrier in their conversation. Again, I don't know if it would have changed anything, but I think it would have at least made the conversation smoother and less awkward for all parties involved. Okay, so then we get the arrival of Dale, which is hilarious. I realized, like, we, or at least I, don't really know that much about Dale. Like, of course I watched, like, Claire Tayshia's season, whatever. I don't remember that much information about him. And he was, like, very surprisingly soft-spoken. I have this thing for voices, if y'all remember from my previous videos. I love a good voice. And so Dale, he's like this really, like, tall, attractive guy who really, like, has this presence when he comes into a room, but then his voice, like, doesn't really, like, match that, which was surprising. Then he, like, gets a date card. He takes Kat out into the date, so we'll get back to that in a second. One thing that I felt like the producers were foreshadowing here, which I wrote down in my notes, Ricky he in his confessionals was starting to, like, notate that he was seeing a lot of guys as competition. Like, when Dale came in, he was like, oh, another man. And of course all the guys were, like, saying that. Like, I think Brian as well had a confessional where he was like, I'm not happy to see Dale. But, like, Ricky just seemed to really internalize it, and he seemed to be less focused on how can I strengthen my connection with, like, the person that I'm interested in, and more focused on how can I make sure that these other guys don't have a chance, which, like, is not the way to go about things. That was just a little foreshadowing, in my opinion. So Dale picks Kat for his first date. He has a conversation with Zoe, which like goes fine. He also chit-chats with Alex, which was super awkward. I'm not a huge Alex fan. I feel like she has good intentions, but I feel like she's like the quintessential millennial. She's like everything that people say is cringy about millennials bottled into one person. Like, that's just her humor. She's always like trying to find something like slapstick to like make a joke about, and like that's just not my sense of humor. So it's like there's nothing wrong with her, but she's just like, it's giving corny. It just gives corny to me, and like that's just like not my thing. But like I don't think she's necessarily done anything wrong for me to like genuinely not like her. But he has a conversation with Alex, and then he chats with Kat. And she says she loves a man over 35 because they have less testosterone and they're sleepy. Okay, girl, she knows what she wants. The date, kind of weird. They go on the boat, the catamaran. I don't really know what the difference is. They're like, you know, talking, getting to know each other, like blah, blah, blah. There's one super awkward moment where Dale is trying to open the champagne and he goes, Pura Vida, and like tries to like pop off the cork, and it doesn't pop off. And he just like says that like 10 times in a row. He's like, Pura Vida, Pura Vida. And I'm like, if I have to hear him say that one more time, I'm actually gonna pull my hair out. It just really bothered me. Thankfully, he gets the champagne. They have their moment. We move past it. And so they're getting to know each other, and pretty normal, standard first date vibes. They're like, one marker to me, like if I'm ever like out in the wild and I see someone who like I feel like is giving that they're on a date, one of the telltale signs for me that it's like a first or like early on date is that they are telling each other about each other instead of experiencing each other. And by that, I mean like Kat, she was saying like, she was literally explaining to Dale, this is my type of humor. I am very dry and I like to be sarcastic. And Dale was like, I really like dad jokes. Like they were just like describing themselves to each other instead of like Dale making a dad joke and Kat saying something dry and sarcastic, which like is fine. Again, I think that's really normal. I just think it's like it's a very like telltale sign that like someone's getting to know each other, because I think what it's signaling is like before even putting yourself in the vulnerable position of like, hey, this is my humor, and like sharing that part of yourself, you're announcing to that person that that's who you are, so that like if they want to reject it or otherwise be not interested, you can go ahead and get that out of the way. Like with going back to Hakeem and Bailey when she was like, I love taking selfies, and he was like, I don't. Okay, cool. Okay, we've wrapped that up. Good. There we go. I don't like what The Bachelor is doing with these like weird little skit things, like when Kat was in the confessional and she was like, oh yeah, like Dale's so cute, and then we cut to him spraying sunscreen like everywhere, like in his crotch. Like that was weird. Cut it out. If a producer is watching this, which I highly doubt that they would be, please cut that out. I don't like that. One area that Dale did lose points for me in was Kat was starting to get seasick, and she said it. She communicated. She said, hey, I'm not feeling well, like can we sit up, blah blah blah. And Dale did not care. He didn't take it seriously. He was just like, LOL, and he took that as an opportunity to like have their first kiss. And I was like if that were me and I was expressing to a guy like, hey, I'm not feeling well, I think I might vomit, and he was like, oh, now's a good time for us to lock lips, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I just felt like that was very like insensitive, very much didn't read the room. And I don't know if it was like in his mind he like already felt that this was a romantic moment and he was already planning to kiss her, and like he didn't want the moment to slip away, and like he was just kind of like caught off guard and was like, you know, whatever, I'm just gonna keep going with like the moment I had in mind. Or if it's a bigger sign that like he's not that attuned to his partner in relationships. So that was not a red flag, obviously, but something to keep an eye on. So then back at the resort, we have some other couples starting to form. We have Brian and Zoe, and people have free will. they can do what they want, unfortunately. But I think that Zoe is miles out of Brian's league. That's what I have to say about that. They really don't interest me as a couple. Every time they came on the screen, I was like, what, girl, you know you don't like this man. Like, you don't like him. And I really thought that, like, her and Dale could have been really cute. I was really rooting for their little moment. And then we have Alexe and Jonathan start to get to know each other, which Jonathan is a cutie, a medium king. He's probably my favorite. He's probably the person who I find most attractive in the cast so far. And so they're getting to know each other. It was kind of awkward just because, like, Alexe led with the question of, like, she tried to make it sound different. She was like, what is the reason you are still on the dating market? Which is basically just like, why are you single? Which, like, is always such an awkward question, because it's really like, what are your flaws? And it's like, whoa, hold on. Hold on, let me tell you about the good parts of me first. Like, dang. So I don't know, I just feel like that's like, it's a normal question that people ask, but I always think it's kind of a cheap shot. It's very awkward. But, you know, it got her and Jonathan talking. They were yapping. They seemed to be having a good time. So that's what they're up to for now. So then we have our first, like, activity, which, like, first I was a little bit wary of, because a lot of these, like, reality type shows that infuse a competition aspect, I'm not really a fan of the competition. It's just like a common trope in, like, these dating reality shows where, like, people all live in a house together. And I'm not usually a fan of these types of games because they're usually very, like, sexual in nature and, like, really focus on getting the contestants to, like, press their bodies up against each other or, like, ask each other very, like, sexually risky questions, which, like, of course is an important part of a relationship, and, like, you want to know if you're sexually compatible with someone, but, like, it gets to a point. It's kind of repetitive, I think, when, like, all the games are like that. So that's just been my experience. So I was kind of, like, wary coming into this, but I actually really liked the game that the producers had for this, like, first, like, setup, where they had each person kind of, like, blurred out, and they had, like, different quotes that they had given the producers, and you had to, like, put a heart or, like, a X sign next to the ones you did or didn't resonate with. So I thought that was actually, like, a really unique idea and a good way to, like, get to know people, get to know what you like without, like, thinking about who it's coming from. Then we had the weird argument between Hakeem and Ricky, which, again, Ricky's very insecure, and he just, like, literally picks that fight for no reason. I frankly don't really have much analysis of the fight because it truly is coming from Ricky's insecurities. Like, it literally had nothing to do with Hakeem. He just wanted someone to pick on in that moment, and he did. He found someone to pick on, and the person took the bait, and they had the argument, and that's what it was. Super weird, super unnecessary. And Alexe was, like, super turned off. She was like, you know, I'm the no drama llama, like, blah blah blah. So I kind of, like, tucked that away in my head for future reference, so we'll come back to that. Then we have Sam pull up, who is apparently one of the villains of Jen's season. I did not watch, but I thought he was super cute, so I was excited about his arrival. And then he and Jess go on a date, and, you know, standard, fine. I guess there was a little bit of question mark, because, like, Spencer was crashing out back home, okay? He was crashing all the way out. And I guess there was a little bit of, like, will they, won't they, and, like, they did share a kiss, but I could tell that Jess was, like, not into it, because, like, after they kissed, she would just, like, literally told Sam, she was like, thank you so much. I have had a great time on this date. Like, her face did not move. There was no light in her eyes. Like, I could just tell her body language. She was not into it. So I was like, they're fine. She and Spencer will get back together. It's all good. Then we start to develop more with Bailey and Jeremy. They go for a walk on the beach. They share their first kiss. And then immediately, it seems like, I'm sure it's edited this way, but immediately Bailey goes and pulls Kyle, and she's like, by the way, I'm still open to other options. Which, like, do your thing, girl. Like, that's what Paradise is all about. So, like, I wasn't mad at it. She's playing both options. Who can win her heart? I'm here for it. And I just like to see Black women loved out loud. But I do. I like to see Black women pursued. And I think it's especially interesting of pairings between white men and black women, because everything is about race. Let's be honest, everything's about race, everything's about power. And so I always think that's especially interesting because in American society, straight white men have nothing to gain from being with a black woman, right? Like, black women, we are considered to be at the bottom rung of the social racial hierarchy. Straight white men who pursue black women have a sense of security in themselves because they're essentially saying, like, I'm forgoing social norms and social, like, what's expected of me and what will ultimately bring me more power and status in my relationship, in society, to genuinely go after someone that I have an interest in. So then we catch back up with Ricky and Alex. Ricky still being a weirdo. He is one of those guys that thinks that, like, his presence, the fact that he woke up and got out of bed and arrived at your door is, like, enough. Where he did not ask you any questions about yourself. He did not, like, plan anything interesting for you to do. He did not, like, you guys have not clicked over anything in particular. He just thinks that, like, him arriving is enough, because he announces to Alex on multiple occasions, he's like, I've shown the most interest, I'm pursuing you the most, like, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, again, in contrast or in comparison internally to Jonathan and how he thinks Jonathan is or isn't showing up for Alex, it's not about him genuinely saying, like, I think that Alex, you and I have the best connection. It's him saying, I am better than this other guy and you should choose me for that reason, which, like, is not enough. That's not sustainable in a relationship. That really fell flat for me. But, like, you can tell that, like, he just thinks he is, like, pulling out all the stops. And one area that I was disappointed with Alex in was going back to when Ricky and Hakeem had the argument and Alex was in her confessional like, that was kind of a turn off. I don't really like unnecessary drama. I thought she was going to bring that up with Ricky and be like, hey, like, if you're going to be my man, because she did say, like, if I'm dating someone, I see them as a representation of me, an extension of me. And I personally, in my personal life, also believe that. That's how I like to operate in my romantic relationship as well. And so I thought she was going to bring that up and be like, hey, like, if you're going to be my man, you need to cut that out with a quickness. And she didn't address it. And I thought that was, like, again, a missed opportunity. And I feel like it's not, of course, ultimately she didn't end up picking him, so it's, like, fine. But I think had she continued with him, I don't think it's fair to hold someone to a standard in your head that you're not communicating with them out loud, right? Like, if Ricky had stayed on the show and continued to pick these unnecessary fights, and she was, like, continuously, like, getting mad at him in the back of her mind, that's not something you can hold against him if you didn't communicate that to him out loud. He's not being given the opportunity to address that behavior and see if he is willing and capable of changing it. So that was one thing where I was kind of like, was Ricky in the wrong for, like, doing this fight? Yes. But also, he's not really in the wrong for, like, have a negative impact on his relationship with Alex, because he didn't know, that was not communicated to him that was something that bothered her. Then we catch up with Justin and Lexi. They have their makeup date, which is super lame. Not the actual, like, them getting to know each other, but, like, the actual, like, date, its activity was super lame. They just, like, go to a couch in front of a pool and chitter chatter and then get in the pool. And I'm like, y'all could have done this at the resort. Like, to me, the purpose of the dates are for them to get out of the resort and to, like, do something fun that, like, other people on the cast are not getting to experience, and, like, have a new activity together. So I was like, why are we watching them sit in the pool that they could have done at home? So that was pretty dry to me. They talk about their past relationships. I really appreciated that Justin was the one to broach the topic of his recent history with Susie, because I think that is his responsibility. It's his previous relationship, his ex. He's the one who was most recently dating someone. So I appreciate that he was the one to bring it up and be like, hey, before you even like get too worried about this, let me just tell you where I stand. So I like that they like laid the foundation out of like having and expecting open communication from one another. And I think that is a really positive and healthy note to start a potential relationship on, because they both like know, okay, if either of us is starting to have some feelings, we've already established like we'll come and talk to one another about it. So I really appreciated that moment that they had. So then we get to the final night. We're at the cocktail party, and this is kind of the moment where like all the like couples that are still like lingering, where like one person is trying to decide between like two people, is like trying to make their last ditch efforts. And there's a moment between Jess and Spencer where Jess is like, hey, like, how are you feeling? And Spencer, he's a sassy king. He was like, well, my feelings haven't changed. Okay, pop off. So, you know, so now the ball is in Jess's court for her to decide. And I personally am rooting for Spencer. I really like him. Well, I really like him for Jess. I think, for me, that's neither here nor there. But he and Jess seem like a really good match. So I'm rooting for them to get back together. Here comes Ricky again. And he's like announcing to Alex. He's like, I like to lead with intellect and intentionality. And he didn't even know that word. He was like, intention. Like, it took him like 5 tries to get that word out. I was like, bro, let's give it a rest. That was a big word for Elmo. So he's just like announcing what he's doing, and I was really disappointed in Alex in this moment, because she really like bought into it a little bit, and I felt like she took that energy to Jonathan, and she was just like, you're not being intentional, you're not showing up for me, you're not putting in effort. And I just don't like, it doesn't sit right with me when I see someone who's a grown person who is so like easily manipulated essentially by someone else, who's like so clearly just saying these things to get what they want out of you. Like, it would have been different if Ricky were coming to her as a friend and giving her advice like, hey, I think you should pick this guy over that guy because this guy has shown up for you in these ways. But like, he was promoting himself. So, of course, he's going to say what he wants to say to, like, try to paint himself in the best light. And we've already seen that his strategy of doing that is to put other guys down in comparison in the process. So it was kind of annoying to me that, like, one, Alex didn't see through that. And number two, that, like, even if she internalized that and, like, took Ricky at his word, at his announcements of, like, this is what he's doing, it was bothersome that she like took that and brought it into her relationship with Jonathan and like opened the conversation with that, instead of just being like, okay, I have this in the back of my mind, let me see what Jonathan is up to. So that didn't really sit right with me, and it makes me a little bit hesitant about like her relationship decision-making skills for the rest of the season, honestly, if she's this easily swindled by someone who's so obviously like just very insecure. We go a little couple minutes following Hakeem around. He gets really nervous, has a little pep talk with himself in the mirror, which like I'm really rooting for Hakeem. He obviously doesn't really have a connection at this point in time, but like I feel like he's that underdog. He's that guy that like is just so expressive and so like 100% himself at all times, and like that's so rare. So I just really can always appreciate people who like show up in no matter in any space fully 100% as themselves. And I just think his person wasn't there. I think his person is out there. I just don't think they were on Paradise. I think he needs someone who's a little quieter. So like that might not be someone who goes on reality TV. Because he is so obviously going to be the star of his relationship. I always tell my boyfriend this, like, I'm the star of our relationship. Like, I'm like the boisterous one when we're hanging out at home, and he's just kind of like the chill vibes. And so that's what Hakeem needs. He needs someone who's just like gonna sit there and love all his silly goofiness and is just ready to soak it in, and that person just wasn't there. But he does his little Hakeem speed round dating, trying to chat with all the girls. Nothing really lands, and that's okay. Okay, so then the last couple that has to tie up their loose ends, or rather the last person, is Bailey. Has to decide between Jeremy and Kyle. Neither of them really moved me personally, but I did not appreciate that Jeremy was already, he kind of indicated that he was just using Bailey for a rose, because he was like, yeah, like in his confessional, he was like, I'd love to get this rose, but like, I want to keep my options open. Like, I'm planning on exploring options with other people, which like, it's fine. That's the purpose of Paradise. But he accepted the rose without giving her the full information, which of course is not in his best interest of staying on the show. It's not in his best interest to say to her like, hey, I'm exploring other options. But it also was disappointing, because I think it was disappointing to watch, because I think Bailey was riding this high of like coming in and having these two guys like really pursue her and thinks that they're interested in her. And come to find out, one of them is just like using her to like stay on the show, and Kyle seemed to be more genuinely interested in getting to know her. So I wish she would have picked Kyle, but she made her decision, and that's what that is. So then we have the rose ceremony, and we have Lexi and Justin, Zoe and Brian, Kat and Dale, Jess and Spencer, Bailey and Jeremy, and Alexe and Jonathan. So that's like the first round of cast couples that we're moving forward with, and we'll see what happens next week when the Goldens come. So thanks for watching. Catch y'all later.